'70s cheaper than it is now?
Yes, but it's relative. So things cost a lot less, but then you have to remember that people were making a lot less. So a teacher in 1970 was making about $10,000 a year. So actually gas was more expensive in the 70s relative to what people made than it is today.
Okay. What was school like in the '70s?
I loved it. I was in elementary school and middle school in the 70s. Maybe just elementary.
I was in elementary and middle.
I think I may have just busted in the middle.
Elementary.
Yeah, so, yeah, I loved it. Did you love it?
I did. It was fun. We helped each other more than I think kids do now.
We didn't have standardized tests.
No.
So we didn't have EOGs or EOCs. We didn't have anything like that.
Did we have the competency test then? No.
See, in Virginia, we didn't have anything. Not back then.
In the '70s, you had to type your what is that? For your senior year, you all do senior projects. We had term paper. We had to type it.
That's right. No computers.
No computers.
No computers at school in the 70s. The first computer I got was in college, which was in 1990. First computer I had.
That's probably the first
And it had less computing power in the whole computer than my last phone, than my first cell phone.
Awesome. Electric typewriter.
That was what I had my first year in college. I had an electric typewriter with a little screen that would do one sentence at a time. That you could correct it before you printed the one sentence.
And I worked in an office at Union Pines, and my first typewriter was an IBM Selectric. It had correct tape in it.
Did it?
Yes, it did.
You remember dot matrix printers? I had one of those.
Yeah.
But that wasn't until the 80s. No
But
computers.
Mimeograph. That's how we ran our copies. You turn the machine with your hand. We have come a long way, baby.
We have come a long way.
A long way.
But school was fun back
It
then.
was. It was.
Okay. What was technology like back then?
Well, that's probably what we were just
I think that's what they were just
talking
talking about.
It was not much, you know, in terms of what you probably think of as technology, like computers and cell phones and smartphones and laptops and all that. None of that existed. You had a telephone, but it wasn't wireless. It was connected to the wall by a cord.
Pages.
You don't see too many
They have
cord
pages
telephones
then?
anymore, do you? No beepers,
it
not
wasn't
until the
beepers and
80s.
pages until the
Probably the earliest versions of the beepers were in the late 70s.
Okay.
But no, not much in the way. I mean, technology was limited to typewriters for doing papers, and then I mean we had TVs. I remember I had a TV. We had one of the first color TVs in my neighborhood, and it had 3 channels: ABC, NBC, and CBS, and that's all you could get.
Mine was black and white. I didn't have a color TV.
It might not even been CBS. It might have been PBS at that point.
It was Channel 4, the educational channel.
Yeah, whatever
Yeah,
that
that's
was.
PBS.
So that was okay too. That was
Yeah,
fun.
that was cool.
Okay.
But we had the electric company. Samuel L. Jackson on the electric company, and he was a bad man.
The
even then.
electric company. You don't
was
know what
so
that is,
good.
do you?
You can probably YouTube it. It's really good.
Yeah, you need to see that.
What kind of cars did they drive back then?
What kind of cars?
Cars.
I had a Nova, Chevrolet Nova. That was my first car in 1978.
You had a Chevy Nova.
Chevy Nova, hatchback.
Let's see. My dad drove a Gran Torino station wagon with red velvet seats, red vinyl seats, not velvet, red vinyl seats, no air conditioning.
Gran
And it had
Torino
a
station wagon?
Gran Torino station wagon, and it had a seat in the back, and he had a little button he could put the back window down with, and me and my twin brother would ride in the back and we'd make faces, because it faced backwards. We'd make faces at people. That was fun. That was fun.
I can't even remember what my parents drove.
My mom drove a
A Ford.
Datsun B210. I remember that. And then my dad had a 1966 Chevy Impala convertible for a while. That was a nice car. That was
Yeah.
fun.
That's a classic.
We used to go to drive-through movies, you know, drive-in theaters. We used to go to those, and probably shouldn't tell this story, but you used to be able to climb over the back seat into the trunk of an Impala. And so we would be in the back seat, and right before we got to the movie theater, he would say, "Okay, boys, everybody in the trunk," and we would climb over and get in the trunk, so he didn't have to pay for us going in. But we didn't have a lot of money.
We didn't have any money. Okay.
Okay. What did they do for entertainment back then?
Well, TV. We stayed outside a
A lot
lot.
of playing outside.
playing
When I was a kid, I
outside.
played outside until well after dark every night. And yeah, we played outside all day, every
Yeah.
day. Not much in terms of TV that we didn't get to watch. We weren't allowed to watch too much TV because there wasn't only but a couple channels. So at nighttime it was mostly grown-up shows. And then
We were outside.
yeah,
I mean, we stayed outside.
that was pretty
You
much
wake
it.
up in the morning,
Read a
get
lot
your
of books.
breakfast. Yeah, we read books.
Read a lot of books.
Did a lot of coloring books, paper dolls.
No DSs,
Mm-mm.
no PS3s.
But we were happy too.
I was pretty happy.
I was,
We got an Atari, but I think that was in the 80s.
probably.
I think that was in the early 80s.
Okay.
Okay. What were the popular TV shows back then?
See, that's got me
Good ones.
stumped. I'm trying to think.
I'll tell you my favorite
70s.
one,
What's that?
Starsky and Hutch.
Starsky.
Oh, I love me some Starsky and Hutch. That
In
was
the
the best show
70s.
ever.
I need
That was
Tim
the
Lucia.
70s.
I can't remember the set. I mean, I watched TV. 70s.
The dating game. That was big.
The Newlywed Game.
Newlywed. That was fun.
What's that? Hollywood Squares.
Ooh, Charlie's Angels.
Charlie's Angels.
Charlie's Angels,
Yes.
that was awesome.
Charlie's
Charlie's
Angels
Angels
was
was
awesome.
good.
That's right.
Yeah, Hollywood Squares.
Hollywood
that was on there
Squares.
too. Yeah. A lot of game shows.
There was a lot of game shows. Price was Right was even on there. Way back then.
Yeah, Bob Barker was doing
Yeah,
it.
Bob Barker. Whatever was on, we only had 3 channels, like you said. It wasn't like we had a big choice to watch different things. Bewitched.
That's right, Bewitched.
Mhm.
Oh, and maybe that was the 80s. I Dream of Jeannie. Was that 80s?
That was the 80s.
Okay, all
I
right.
Dream of Jeannie came in the 80s.
That was pretty good though.
That was.
What were the popular music back then?
Cameo.
Disco.
Disco music.
Disco was all the rage in the 70s. That was the most popular music. You had basically 3 types of music in the 70s. You correct me if I'm wrong, but you still had Motown,
Mm-hmm.
you had disco, and you had what we would call now classic rock.
Mm-hmm.
That was basically your 3 choices. I mean, if you weren't like listening to Lawrence Welk. Ooh, Lawrence Welk show.
Lawrence Welk
Another
show.
one, yeah.
Good night, sleep tight, pleasant dreams.
You know, if you weren't listening to like classical music and big band stuff from the 50s, then it was classic rock, kind of hangover from the 60s music, and then you had disco was really the one. Saturday Night Fever
Saturday Night Fever.
introduced disco to the world.
John Travolta.
John Travolta when he was closer to your age than mine.
And I think that's it.
That's
Okay.
it? You didn't ask about the hairstyles. The 70s hairstyles?
What were the hairstyles like back
Afro puffs.
Afro puffs, and you know, you had like long sideburns, long hair for guys.
Mhm. Thick mustache. We were cool. It was fun, Thomas. If I had to go back, I'd go back to the 70s.
You go back to the
I
70s?
go back.
I go back to the 80s.
I go back to the 70s.
I'd do the 80s.
I
Your
was
dad would
happy.
do the 80s. You should have seen him in the 80s.
He was tough.